Hello and welcome to this great big Wednesday edition of Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host, joining you today not from Southern California, but from Birmingham, Alabama, where I am delighted to be at the 19th annual EWTN Catholic Radio Conference. And as I was saying to them here, it's just a lot of fun to finally get to be working with professionals. That's not true. I shouldn't say that. That's a wrong thing to say. Sorry, Nick. But I am delighted to be here, and they do treat you awful well when you come here to Birmingham, Alabama. This hour, we've got Father Hugh Barber with us. Father Barber is our chaplain at Catholic Answers. He is a Norbertine priest. He is a graduate of super big, important universities in Rome. One of them called the Augustinianum. One of them called the Angelicum. How did I do, Father?
That's pretty good. Yeah.
That's pretty. All right. How do you like it here in Alabama?
I'm not in Alabama, but how do you like it?
Oh, I like it a lot. I wondered why I couldn't see you here. So you're back in
Alabama, right? It's a great place. Any place in the South is fine.
Yes, you like the South because you're from North Carolina, or your attachments are to North Carolina.
Exactly, right.
I've heard that they have some good football around here. I have not seen it yet, but it's a Wednesday, so.
But we're having a hard time replacing you around here.
Oh, don't you shouldn't be replacing me, Father. I'm just away for a couple of days. Don't replace me,
No, not
please.
replacing is a positive term. It means we just don't know what to do without you.
Oh, all right. Fair enough.
Someone should call in with a question. Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah. Well, I should probably give out the number. I don't know if I did. 888-318-7884 is the number. If you prefer the spelled version, it's 888-31-TRUTH. And when Father is here, we say the chaplain is in. He's our chaplain, and he does a pretty good job at it. And we'd like to let him be your chaplain for this hour.
Fair to Midland, as they would say in Alabama.
My mother used to say that, fair to Midland. And and she's from Massachusetts, so I'm not.
You didn't have to say that. That's okay.
For the life of me, cannot figure out what you have against Massachusetts.
I have nothing against Massachusetts. Anyway, go ahead.
Let me give out the number again, Father. 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH if you prefer the spelled version. And if you have an apologetics type question, maybe you hang on to that till the second hour when Trent Horn will be with us. We take questions of a more pastoral nature when we have the chaplain with us. Questions about maybe the sacraments, your personal reception of the sacraments, maybe your prayer life, your family life, those kinds of things. All of that is welcome. 888-318-7884. And Father, I can see all the way from here that the lines are beginning to fill up. Are you ready to take some questions?
Sure.
All righty. Let's go to Rachel in Ohio, listening on 94.5 FM. Rachel, your question for Father Hugh Barber.
Hi there.
Hi.
So my question has to do with oral contraceptives, and I'm sorry if this isn't directly on the topic of what you're asking, but I think it is.
It seems to fall. Yeah, I think you're well within the bounds with Father.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So my question is, I get why things like Plan B and things that, after an egg has been fertilized, why those are against the Catholic doctrine. But I'm a little confused why oral contraceptives are against it, since, they make a woman not even ovulate in the first place. So, IUDs and oral contraceptives, why are those also against it?
Well, you're a very intelligent woman, because actually that was the issue when oral contraceptives first came out, and St. John the 23rd and Paul VI wanted to look into the question. And the question was precisely the one you raised: does that really qualify as contraception when you're simply regulating periods? No. And so there were a number of considerations that came into being, but the Pope himself determined, Paul VI, that the key issue there is the intention. What do you intend to do? This is everything in human moral action. And if you intend to have a marital act, an act of intercourse, deliberately banning or removing the possibility of procreation, then of course this is immoral. And that's where the Church came down on the side of the position that she has held ever since. So if you look carefully at it, it's not just because oral contraceptives, sometimes they can be used in order to regulate cycles in a legitimate way, or to stop bleeding and all kinds of other things. and that may be a point that you could make, but the intention: are you taking them in order to have marital intercourse while preventing conception? And if that's the intention, well, then of course it's wrong, and that's where the church comes out, because in all moral acts there's both the action itself and the circumstances of the act, but also the intention which underlies the act. And in this case, the intention is a contraceptive one, so we can't go along with it. Sorry.
Does that help you,
Okay.
Rachel?
Yeah.
It does help me. So, like, just to clarify then, if it's for the intention specifically of preventing pregnancy, it's wrong. But if you're taking it for another medical reason, you're not breaking Catholic doctrine?
Not at all. And people get scrupulous about that because there are side effects to the use of these things, which could lead to miscarriages and other things. But if the intention is not a contraceptive one, but rather a medical one, then a person can proceed with tranquility of conscience with their doctor's assistance.
Okay, thank you. That helps a lot.
God bless you. Peace.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Appreciate that call. The chaplain is in today. Our chaplain is Father Hugh Barber, Norbertine priest of the Abbey of St. Michael, which is in Orange County, California. But now he's with us on weekdays at Catholic Answers as our chaplain, and we share him with you this hour. And you can give him a call, 888-318-7884. If you have a question of a chaplainy nature, 888-318-7884. We go now to Mary in Fort Worth, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Mary, your question for Father Hugh Barber.
Hi, Father.
Hello.
My question is in regards to praying for holy souls and the deceased. So I know a mass should be offered, whenever a family member passes away. So how often should a mass be offered? What should the frequency be, and for how long? How do we know when that soul is no longer in purgatory?
Well, I mean, in Catholic tradition, people have different approaches, but let's just say there was a certain tradition where the person has the mass of their burial, and then of a month after they died, and then a year after they died, and then their anniversary ever since, and that's kind of a common practice. But you couldn't really offer mass too much for the departed. There's the other tradition, a very beautiful one, which came into the church under Gregory the Great, St. Gregory the Great, but also exists in the Eastern Church as well, where you would have consecutive masses, say 30 in the Latin Church, 30, and in the Eastern Church, 40, for the repose of the soul of the faithful departed. And this is a very powerful grace. It's so-called Gregorian Mass offered for the departed. So I would say, as often as you can, and of course in the meantime there are other means of assisting the departed, both the works of mercy, of charity for their repose, and prayers and penances, but certainly the Holy Mass, as the Catechism itself, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, makes clear that that's the most effective means of assisting the departed. So there's no way to exaggerate that. Now, what we need to understand, though, is that the Mass offered to the departed doesn't have to be the liturgical Mass of the dead. So it doesn't mean that the Mass has to be mentioning them and using the formularies for Masses for the departed, because it's the priest's intention of offering the sacrifice which is what makes it effective for the departed. So when we say that we're offering Masses for the dead, it doesn't mean that people have to show up or there's any kind of special form for it. It's just a question of the intention whereby the priest offers the Mass. But Masses for the departed are most efficacious and highly to be recommended.
Okay. And what about offering Masses for the living?
Well, the living have a particular advantage because the sacrament of the altar, the sacrament of the Mass, is applied directly to the living who are baptized. And so the effects of the sacrifice offered for a particular baptized person are very, very great, and they're immediate. Whereas for the departed, since the church has no jurisdiction over the departed, the church encourages this practice, but doesn't have any way of knowing exactly to whom the graces or the application goes. And so you have all these nice stories in books on purgatory where, a rich guy who was mean to the poor and never took care of anybody, and left $1,000 for his masses after he died. Well, that none of them went for him. They went for poor people that didn't have anyone to offer masses for them. So when we offer masses for the departed, we have to remember that it's by way of what the church says, by way of suffrage. That's the term, by way of our prayer applied to them. But of course, it is still, with the testimony of the Catechism, the most efficacious way of assisting the departed, because it's the offering up of the body and blood of the Savior. So I would say masses for the living, great, and even per se more powerful. But mass for the departed, since they can't help themselves, also much to be recommended.
Mary, thank you very much. I hope that was helpful to you. Father, I wonder if I could just ask you a practical question in
Sure.
regard to what Mary said. If you, as a priest, what happens if someone comes up to you and says, Father, could you offer a mass for my deceased relative? I mean, how am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to approach you about it? And then what's supposed to happen?
Well, with the offering of Holy Mass for a particular intention, there are two things to be kept in mind. One thing is to be remembered in the memento or the remembrance of the living or the departed at Holy Mass by a priest. And that, of course, you can ask anytime, and the priest simply prays for you at Holy Mass. But if you want the actual sacrifice, this particular Mass, to be offered for one of the living or one of the dead, then that has to be a very explicit intention on the part of the priest. And the Church is pretty technical about that, in that we're not free to ignore these intentions, but we have to take them very seriously. So it sometimes happens to a priest that, someone comes up right at the last minute and they think that all they're asking is that they remembered at Mass. But the priest, they say, well, you offer this Mass for my mother or my father. Well, that's a little different thing from simply praying for them at the Mass. So if you want a Mass offered for the particular intentions of a departed soul or someone living, then you need to make that explicit. And the Church does not require an offering for that, but it's customary, you could say. It's customary
I see.
to make an offering, just because the priest lives, not I, because I'm a religious, so I'm okay with all that. You can just ask me. But he has to keep track of the intentions for which he's celebrating Holy Mass, and the Church requires in her law that a priest mark and keep down a record of the Masses he's offered for the living and the dead, so that there's no injustice done to the faithful.
I see. Well, thank you, Father.
Sure.
And thank you, Mary, very much for that question. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more. The Chaplain is in on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Catholic Answers Live. We're here for you.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
Our mission is to transform the world one woman at a time through a spiritual program of formation that helps them to see who they are as daughters of the Most High God and to enjoy the gift that God has given to them by virtue of their femininity.
Women of Grace with Jonette Bankovic-Williams. Tomorrow morning, 11 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. As I said before, I'm at the 19th annual EWTN Catholic Radio Conference here in Birmingham, Alabama, but joined through the magic of technology with our studio back in California, where Father Hugh Barber is taking your questions. Father is our chaplain, and we're taking chaplain-type questions today, 888-318-7884. The number, let's go to Jacob in Rochester, New York, listening on the Station of the Cross, 1460 AM. Jacob, your question for Father Hugh Barber.
Hi, Father. Mary keep you forever.
Thank you. That's a beautiful prayer. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So this is going to be a hard question to frame, mostly because I'm really confused on the sort of emotions that I experience with it. It's about the Eucharist, and I know as Catholics we're held to believe that Jesus is truly present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist.
Mm-hmm.
So when the priest has consecrated the host and it becomes Jesus, I kind of try to envision that Jesus is actually standing there before me, maybe in his crucified version. But the thing that I really struggle with is that when we receive communion, where Jesus is, in our mouth and we're actually chewing him, there's a lot of really weird emotions associated with that, and I try to think about it in a holy way, but then I kind of feel, bad in the same way that I'm sort of eating Jesus. So can you help me to try to contemplate that, like what sort of meditations I can have that will help me to better understand that and how he wants to be with us in the Eucharist?
Very beautiful question, and there is an answer to your question. So, first of all, our Lord is present to you in his complete reality. And so whatever you imagine, in whatever state you imagine him to be, because his whole self is there, whether a little baby or a teacher of Israel or one suffering in his passion or one glorious on high, he's there with you. So the whole mystery is there. That's what he did for the disciples on the way to Emmaus after his resurrection. He explained everything to them that was found in the Scriptures. So that's the first point. Now, for a moment, I'm going to turn aside and cough. Sorry. Excuse me. So there we go. And I can't find the button here to push it. I know it's there somewhere, but I can't find it. Anyway,
you did fine.
So yeah. So the mystery of the Eucharist is precisely that our Lord's natural body, risen and glorious, born of the Virgin Mary, who was crucified and died for us and rose again, in the glory of heaven, bears some mysterious connection to the merest appearances of bread and wine, so that where they are, he is. Now that's a very deep mystery. So, but I think we modern people might be able to understand it a little more easily than our forebears, because we have these little devices in our pockets all the time. We have cell phones and all kinds of things where we can connect to almost anything in the world and do it from outer space even, managing to see and to hear almost anything that we want to. And that, of course, isn't as deep or as powerful as the mystery of the Holy Eucharist, but let's just say our Lord as God is capable of giving himself to us in this manner, mysteriously and beyond our comprehension, but truly and really. And the fact is, and this is the part that maybe, like you might say, freaks you out, because that's the way you're asking the question, is his love for you is so intense and so perfect that he doesn't mind being eaten. He doesn't mind being consumed. He doesn't mind entering into your body and he into yours. He doesn't mind any of that because he just wants to be one with you, and that's his love for you. And that's a very powerful and real thing, and I think that's what I sense in your question is the concreteness of the whole thing. And believe me, it's more concrete than we think. I mean, we'll like explain it like, well, it's a sacrament, it's a symbol, it's a sign, but really and truly, it's so much more real than. I don't know if you're married. Are you married?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It's so much more real than the embrace of your spouse, than the love of your mother, than the attention of your best friend. It's like much more real than that. And yet we don't quite understand that, but our Lord does. And in the Holy Eucharist, he completely and utterly gives himself to you 100%. That's why we say body, blood, soul, and Godhead, divinity. That's just like, what more could you say than that? But it's really, really true. So there's something up there in the skies, if you will, that relates to these mere appearances of bread and wine that our Lord uses, and we'll see it in heaven finally what that relationship is, that our Lord uses that in order to convey himself to us in such an intimate and loving way. I'm not exaggerating.
Jacob?
Thank you, Father.
Thank you. God bless you, Jacob.
God bless you.
Yeah, and thank you for saying, Mary, keep you.
I know that means a lot to you, Father. We're getting calls and comments that are right in your wheelhouse today, asking about praying for the dead, which is something you emphasize all the time, and commending you to Mary. You're doing all right today, Father, with the callers. They must know you. Aaron in Dallas is next. Aaron in Dallas is listening on Periscope. This is our second caller from Periscope in 2 days after years of not getting any. Aaron, we're happy to have you. Your question for Father.
Oh, hi. Hey, Father here.
Hey, Aaron. God bless you.
Thanks. So I'm not really sure whether what I'm doing in this situation is scrupulous or necessary vigilance, but whenever I go up for communion, I look at the ground to see if there are any fragments of the Eucharist. And I've noticed when churches have darker red carpets, there are many tiny cream-colored particles on the ground, which are probably dirt more than anything else.
Uh-huh.
But it possibly could be a fragment. And if I had to check them, it would disrupt the communion line. And if I had to report them to a priest, it would likely result in many false alarms.
Mm-hmm.
And recently it's caused me anxiety during Mass that I would sin by failing to investigate or report tiny white particles that I see.
Sure.
I just want to know if my mindset about this is necessary caution or just scruples.
I would say, with great love for you, that it's scruples. That is, if you happen to notice something, then that's one thing. But if you're driven by a certain anxiety to look, of course you're going to find what you're looking for, and you'll be disturbed and anguished. And the fact is, the way hosts are manufactured nowadays, the number of particles is very, very few. I mean, I can tell you that from experience. There's some, but I mean, the ones that actually exist are so tiny that you wouldn't be able to see them standing upright and looking down. So I would say, just leave it up to the Lord, but resist the temptation, and it is a temptation to distract yourself by looking for particles like that. Just don't do it. Just concentrate on the Savior who is coming to you in his great love for you, and just don't make it into something which is an exercise in anxiety or sadness. We just need to be very, very confident with him. Our Lord knew when he instituted the Eucharist that there would be particles that would fall away. He instituted his sacrament under the appearances of bread and wine, that is, of food, and that involves a certain risk, if you will. And he loves us so much that that's something he can take care of. But I would just say for you, if you actually do see something, that's fine, but don't look for it and don't worry about it. Just you're rushing forward to receive the goodness of the Lord, and he'll recompense you in the way he knows how. Okay?
So let's say I see something let's say when I go and just a white particle, would I
ignore it. Ignore it. Just if you see it on the carpet, ignore it. All right? Unless it's evident to you that it's a piece of the host, just don't even look. What you should do when you go to communion is just keep your head like keep your eyes straight ahead and go to communion. But please don't, because there's no way. I mean, as a priest, I've had this experience also, and there's so many little funny white particles. I mean, if you're saying Mass even without the current arrangements, and a bit of lint gets on the paten from your purificator or your pall, it looks like it might be a piece of hose, but it's not. So just be calm and don't worry about it. I promise you it's okay.
Aaron, thanks for the call. You can hear the music. That means we have to move on. I hope that was helpful to you. The chaplain is in today. Father Hugh Barber is our chaplain, and for the next half hour, he's your chaplain. Give a call, 888-318-7884.
Catholic Answers Live.
With his new DVD, Understanding Revelation, Decoding the Bible's Most Mysterious Book, Jimmy Akin unlocks the secrets of Revelation so that anyone can understand them. Packed with almost 2 hours of eye-opening material, it paints an entirely different picture of the Book of Revelation than the one most people already have. The Book of Revelation was meant to reveal God's message to His church. And in Understanding Revelation, Jimmy Akin shows you how it does exactly that. Order your copy of Understanding Revelation today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
A generation ago, Christian parents didn't have to worry about how to explain transgenderism to their 9-year-old or help their teenager deal with mockery at school for believing in traditional marriage. But today, as our culture's moral center continues to fly apart, and with every form of deviance publicly aired and celebrated, we have no choice but to equip our kids to understand about such issues. In Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, Layla Miller and Trent Horn give parents the crucial tools and techniques to form children with the understanding they need, appropriate to their age and maturity level, to meet the world's challenges. Silence can no longer be an option. If we're not teaching our children how to understand tough moral issues, then the world will. Read Made This Way and learn how to give your kids a firm foundation on which to build a life of moral clarity and happiness. Order your copy of Made This Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or logging on to the shop at Catholic.com.
Hi, this is Dr. David Anders. There are a lot of misconceptions about the Catholic faith. We clear them up on Call to Communion, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio. Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Killett, your host. Our guest this hour is Father Hugh Barber, Norbertine priest and chaplain to those of us at Catholic Answers. And the chaplain is in this hour. 888-318-7884 is the number. Next hour, Trent Horn will be here, so we'll turn more towards the apologetics question. This hour, we take questions of a more pastoral or family or sacramental nature, having to do with your relationship with the Lord and with others. Those are the two main things, right, Father? Relationship with the Lord and relationship with others?
There isn't anything else in our whole lives. That's it.
There's dogs.
That's someone else, okay?
Oh. I didn't think you would go there, Father. Okay, fine.
God made the animals, so...
He did. He did a good job,
He can
Joe.
include that in the rest of it, okay? He can.
Yeah.
I was asked a question last week about pets in heaven, so I have a whole consideration, but that's another time.
Well, we're not answering that unless someone calls and asks.
No, please, not tonight.
But because I don't want my pets to go to heaven. We have a coyote that keeps walking around our neighborhood. And so the dogs have to come in early now. Because you never know.
Those aren't pets, though. They're coyotes. But anyway.
No, I know, but they're beautiful animals. But they'll also eat your dog.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
and
go
your
to
cat. No.
Do I seem like a cat person to you in any way, Father?
I have no idea.
Okay, fair enough. There's a lot of people on the line, Father. We got to get to some calls.
Okay, fine. Well, then go ahead.
I feel like I exasperate you sometimes.
You
John,
do not exasperate me in the least.
Okay, John in Sioux Falls, listening on Real Presence Radio. You are up next with Father Hugh Barber. Your question, please, John.
Hi. Thank you, Father, for sharing your your wisdom and your knowledge. First of all, you're doing the Lord's work.
Well, thank you.
Amen.
God bless you.
I looked into the Catechism of the Catholic Church on indulgences, and they are, if you receive an indulgence, you are free to offer that to someone in purgatory. It doesn't say anything about offering that to a person who's still living.
Mm-hmm.
Is that prohibited? Is there a canonical problem with that? And if
Yes.
you do it, what of it?
Well, no, the church could, in principle, allow us to apply indulgences to the living, but she doesn't. And that's because indulgences are important, but more important are the works of prayer and penance and mercy to which indulgences are attached. And so she prefers that we offer those things for our own soul. Excuse me, I have to turn away from the microphone.
Somebody needs to teach Father how to use the
I don't know
cough
how to
button
use
there,
the button
Nick.
there.
Oh, he's back. Okay.
Sorry. Anyway.
Oh, no. Thought he was back.
There we
Okay.
go. I'm back. And so, but the souls of the faithful departed are incapable of assisting themselves in any way. And so they can only passively receive our assistance. So in the church's practice, you can gain an indulgence for yourself among the living or for the souls of the faithful departed. But for another living person, we don't have that question. But it is a question of church discipline. The church could do that, but she doesn't, because she likes to encourage the faithful to say, well, if you're among the living, you're still able to pray, do penance, and perform works of mercy. So someone else doesn't need to do those things for you. You need to do them. And so it's supposed to be an instructive thing, that we gain indulgence for ourselves and for the faithful departed, but not for those who are still living. But it's still not like speculatively or theologically, it's not impossible, but the church just doesn't do that. So that's the answer there.
Terrific. That absolutely helps. Thank you.
Yeah. But,
Thank you, John.
Yeah, God bless you. Peace.
Father, before I go to the next caller, I just want to tell you
Sure.
something. If you look down on the desk right in front of you, there's a little button attached to it. If you push that button, your microphone goes off.
Oh, that's right there.
Yeah, now then you can cough.
Cough blocks.
Yep.
I thought it was on the floor.
We probably should have explained that to you at some point. I'm
there you
sorry.
go. So you didn't hear that, did you?
No, I did not.
No, but
And,
I didn't know. It's just right here. It's literally in front of me.
Yes,
it's right
I
by
know.
my paunch.
I don't believe
it's there.
Paunch is the
it's there
correct
by
word.
my
but,
paunch.
Right. Paunch was the guy on Chips. Do you remember the TV show Chips?
No, I never
Paunch
watched
and John?
Listen, I have no idea what TV is all about.
I know, because
I entered the monastery in '82, and I never watched TV after that. So you have to instruct me.
That, I bet that has a lot to do with your.
Why I'm so happy?
Yeah, I bet that does actually. Like not watching TV since 1982 probably means you're much happier than the people around you. Yeah. I'm starting to. Okay, fair enough. Teresa in Boston has a question, Father. She's listening on 10:30 a.m. Teresa, don't worry. Father loves people from Massachusetts. Your question, please.
Yes, hi. So I am a family nurse practitioner. I've been one for about 25 years, and the issue of the birth control pill has always bothered me because it functions in three ways, and I just I looked it up again because I wanted to make sure of what I'm saying, but on WebMD it gives you the three ways, and it's thickening cervical mucus and decreasing ovulation, but the part that bothers me is that a fertilized egg can go to the uterus and not implant, and so you could actually be causing little abortions and not know it. And women all of the time will have like, gee, I had a heavier period this month, and they may have actually had an abortion and not known it. So I don't prescribe it at the job I'm at right now, but I'm taking on another position, and I'm worried that I will have to give somebody a refill or, give them this birth control pill. And am I morally at risk if I do that?
Yes, well, in the case of a refill where you don't have to ask for the reason why they're taking it, you can give yourself a pass because there, as you know, there are a number of reasons why someone might take some kind of hormonal contraceptive that aren't abortifacient or with a contraceptive intention. So that might be okay. I mean, I'm just trying to give you the minimum of what's possible. But on the other hand, in the cases you describe, it's all immoral. That is, it's not just immoral if a fertilized ovum is expelled or dies. It's all immoral from the beginning, and it's all contraception, and we're not allowed to engage in that. And so one of the problems with the whole pro-life movement is our association with Protestants and others who have no objection to contraception. They'll make a big distinction between, oh, well, as long as it's not taking the life of a fertilized egg, then it's okay. But in point of fact, none of it's okay. And because life is a continuum from the act of procreation all the way through, and we need to be very clear about that and recognize that that we can't formally participate in that evil. That's a very hard thing to do, especially if you're a health professional. But that's why I began by saying, if it's a case where you don't need to know their reason, you can give yourself a pass. You don't have to ask because it's whatever the doctor prescribed. But if you are actually counseling them or giving them advice or instruction, then, of course, you're in a difficult position. And I'm just sorry about that. I wish it were different, but it's not. You have to be very, very insistent that you don't participate in immoral acts, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the Planned Parenthood website, which popped up, I just put in my search line, how do birth control pills work?
Yeah.
They mention the decreased ovulation and thickening of mucus so that the sperm can't get to the egg, but they don't mention the third way, which is how a fertilized egg can be just discarded through the woman without her knowing. So.
Right, and I think that from a Catholic point of view, as I emphasize, it's just wrong from the beginning, however you cut it. And so I don't think that we need to be especially scrupulous or anxious about whether or not it was a fertilized ovum or simply the procreative act which was impeded. I think that our teaching is very clear that we're not allowed to interrupt or misdirect the act of procreation in order to prevent conception, and that's it. And I think that is a better way to go about it so that women don't feel like guilty of murder for taking a birth control pill, which I don't think is psychologically or morally particularly helpful. But on the other hand, we need to realize that all of this is a possibility, but what's going on is just wrong from the start. And we need to be careful about that. And that's what we've always taught and always will teach. So, I mean, the doctors and fathers of the church, St. Thomas and whatnot, they just always taught that contraception was wrong, whether in their opinion, because they had medieval physiology, whether there was an animated fetus or a not animated one, it was always immoral. And that position we can maintain and just say, let's just not do these things, they're wrong. Whether they're taking of a human life or not, it's just wrong.
Only healthy function of a woman, it's the only pill, the only medication in our society where you're treating something healthy. So have something healthy and normal that's existing in a woman, the function, her fertility, is treated and medicated to suppress it. And it's such a sad. Women think it's liberating, but it's the exact opposite.
No, it's a nightmare. And there are, as far as I understand, I'm not an expert, but there are uses of these hormones which are legitimate if the woman has bleeding issues and stuff like that, to kind of regulate things, and that may have the side effect of some kind of miscarriage or whatever. But those things the church allows by reason of the principle of double effect, and we could go into that later. But the fact is, if your intention, it's very clear, if your intention is to prevent conception while still having sexual relations, then this is wrong. That's the way it is.
Teresa, if you'll hang on the line for a minute, Assistant Producer Marie can get your address. I'd like to send you a book. It's called Inseparable. It's probably the best book. For me, it's the best book I've ever read on contraception. Todd Aguilaro, the head of publishing at Catholic Answers, edited the book, and it is. I'm sure if more people would get it into their hands, it would be life-changing for them, because they would, I think, fully appreciate God's love for them, both in their body and in their soul. But I'd like to send it to you. If you're willing and you'd like to have that, hang on the line, and Assistant Producer Marie will get your address. We have to take a break. We'll be right back with more of The Chaplain is In on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
We're glad you're with us. Stick around for more Catholic Answers Live.
Why do we need Catholic radio? Because not everybody's sitting in front of a computer or watching their television set at home. How about when driving to work? Catholic radio's there for you. I may be a Catholic priest, but I'm still a student of the faith, and Catholic radio helps supply good material, whether it be a question and answer format show, whether it be a show itself on doctrine or theology. I myself, as a priest, am always learning.
Father Wade thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you.
A lot of people think that street evangelization involves yelling out of a bullhorn telling people that they're going to hell. Not so with St. Paul's Street Evangelization. Our methods are non-confrontational and effective. We simply offer information on the Catholic faith along with rosaries, miraculous medals, and prayer. Pope Francis wrote about how beautiful it is to see street preachers joyfully bringing Jesus to every corner of the earth. Street evangelization is fun and fruitful. Join us today at streetevangelization.com.
The Chaplain is in today on Catholic Answers Live. Second hour, Trent Horn will be in. I am not in. I am away. I'm in Alabama at the 19th annual EWTN radio conference, where we are being treated very, very well. And it's just wonderful to be around all the radio people from all around the country. Just some of these radio stations, it's just somebody had the idea, we need Catholic radio in our town or our city, and they got up and they did it, and they're just remarkable people to meet and to get to be around. So we're really grateful to be here. But we left Father Hugh Barber back in the studio in California, but he's ready to take your calls. 888-318-7884 is the number. We'll go now to Taylor in Noblesville, watching on YouTube Live. Taylor, your question for Father.
Hey, Taylor.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I really appreciate it. Mine is basically, I am a candidate, and I'm in a state of mortal sin right now, but I'm unable to go to confession because I'm not an RCIA. And I would be in it, but my parents they don't want me to be in an RCIA. I'm the only, non-anti-Catholic person in my family. So I just was wondering what you think I should do in this situation.
Taylor, before Father answers, how old are you?
I'm 15.
Okay, thank you. Father?
Yeah. Well, Taylor, are you baptized?
Yes.
Okay, so you're already baptized, all right? And your parents are not allowing you to go to RCIA, so they're prohibiting you from becoming a Catholic. Is that true?
Yeah, I have to find my own rights to Mass and stuff, and yeah, they're just pretty against it, but they aren't fully you can't go there at all.
Right, they just don't help you with it, yeah. Well, no, if you're baptized, I would, if you're baptized, then you automatically have the conditions whereby you could receive validly the sacrament of penance. So if you're being impeded by an unreasonable expectation or action on the part of someone else, then I would tell you, I could get in trouble with some diocesan authorities or whatever. I would just tell you, just go to confession. Just go. Mm-hmm. Because if you have a baptized soul, then you are already able to receive the graces of the sacrament, and just go.
And you believe what the Catholic Church teaches.
You believe what the Church teaches about it. And of course, you're not able to go to communion yet, and that's of course a church discipline. But just go, and you don't have to explain it all to the priest either, because he may not get it. I would just go and just say, and confess your sins and say, I want to confess the sins of my whole life or whatever sins I have. And when you say you're in a state of mortal sin, don't be so sure. Just trust in the Lord and make a good confession and tell him you're sorry. But I would really and truly just say, well, go ahead. And then little by little things will work out. But you're not theologically prohibited from receiving the grace of the sacrament of penance simply because someone says you can't go if you're baptized.
Yeah, I just I talked to my priest about it, and he's relatively new out of seminary. He's 28, but he looked at me and he was kind of like, he said like, oh, you're not in any of like the special things, obviously. Like I'm not near death, and then he said since I'm not in RCIA, I wasn't allowed to go to confession, or he wouldn't like allow for me to go to confession. So it was very hard for me to, I guess, take that. You know what I mean?
Terrible. Let's say he may be a little, lack a little imagination, because frankly, if you're baptized, truly baptized, and the question is not your baptism but your confession. Confession is the sacrament given after baptism for sins committed after baptism, and if I would say, just find a priest who's willing to hear a confession, and you don't have to go into all the details. Just find a nice Catholic prayer book that teaches you how to do it. Like there's a nice manual of prayers that's from Chicago, and just do it. And you'll be fine, because the sacraments work. They actually work. If you're like baptized, it'll work. And in the meantime, as life goes on, as you get older, you'll be able to sort all this out. But I wouldn't want to impede you from going to confession for your peace of conscience in the meantime, before you're able to be confirmed and receive Holy Communion. So that's my public opinion, and hopefully no one's going to give me any trouble about it. But I think it's completely true. And I'll certainly pray for you in the meantime.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it.
Taylor, I'm praying for you. God bless you.
God bless you too.
Peace.
Thank you, Taylor. What an inspiring call. I really appreciate that call, Taylor. I have some sense of shame when I hear that, Father, thinking of in my life, given the gift of the Catholic faith, without any hindrance, and failing to practice it sometimes, and failing to embrace the sacraments and all that. You hear a young man like that who believes in the sacraments and wants so badly to receive them, it gives you a sense of, maybe I should have appreciated them more myself.
Amen, brother.
Amen. What a beautiful call. Thank you so much, Taylor. Let's go. Let me just check the time here. Yeah, let's go to Mike in New Orleans, listening on 690 AM. Mike, you are on with Father Hugh Barber, who now knows how to use the cough button. Your question, Mike.
Well, thank you for taking my call. I'm in the restaurant business, and outside of one of my restaurants, I have a statue of the Blessed Mother. Also, on the outside of my 24-hour diner, I have a reader board, and this past week I put up a sign that said, about the midterm elections, please vote, and please consider voting pro-life. Well, I've had problems before when I've asked people to consider voting pro-life. Some people take serious offense to it. Some of the public take serious offense, and they tell me I should mind my own business, let them make up their own mind. Anyway, the point of my call is that someone removed the head of my statue of my Blessed Mother on the outside of the sign, and I'm pretty sure they're pretty related to the reader board. My question to you is, because I can't find the top half of the statue, and there was also a statue of a praying angel that was cut in half also. I did find the head to the angel, but I can't find the head to the Blessed Mother. What do I do with as far as, I guess, the disposal of the statue? I don't want to throw it in a dumpster, that's for sure. I don't know what the proper thing to do is.
Well, you could, it's a blessed object. It was blessed before you put it out there, probably.
Is that right?
I would, and it's a sacred image in any case. So I would say, if you're able to just discard it by burying it somewhere, or by reducing it to rubble, basically. I mean, that seems a little bit counterintuitive, but just, as long, the main thing there with a sacred image is that it not be dishonored while it is clearly and evidently a sacred image. But if it's reduced to its components, for a good reason, and in this case you'd have a good reason, then you could just do that. Because burying it, of course, it's not gonna decompose very quickly. I would just crush it and bury it somewhere, but not, of course, in front of anybody, but just doing it as a reverent way of disposing of the thing, and to making so that it's not anymore an image of Our Lady, but is simply some material components. That's what I would do.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay, Mike.
it's unfortunate that this happened, and of course, in the meantime, though, you got to put another statue out there as fast as you can.
Oh, absolutely.
And as often as they take it down, you have to put one up again.
That's I'm with you 100%.
Yeah. Okay. God bless you.
Yeah, Mike, how impressive that you in front of your business you do these things. It's a real witness to the faith. And
It's Louisiana,
Oh, are there some Catholics down there, Father?
Yeah, some.
There are? Okay. Yeah. Mike, thanks for the call. Father Hugh Barber is our guest. The chaplain is in. I think I'm having trouble with the clock here, but Jerry in Indiana, listening on Redeemer Radio. You got about a few seconds to ask Father a question to give him time to answer it. Go ahead. Jerry?
Hey, Jerry.
Oh, am I okay? You can hear me, okay?
Absolutely.
So I have the screener told me that I'm only allowed one question, but I'm gonna ask just a couple quick ones. I try to do plenary indulgences for souls. Like, I stay in the range of confession, and I stay in the range of, I go to Mass, and I say the rosary in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Somebody told me that it doesn't matter because you might be attached, if you're attached to any sin.
Oh, no.
All right, well, let's start with that one.
They don't understand the conditions for a plenary indulgence. Plenary indulgence, it's true, to gain a plenary indulgence, you have to be free from all attachment to sin, even venial sin. But that means the attachment that you would have necessary for confessing those sins. Like, you don't want to offend God. You don't want to commit venial or mortal sins. And so the detachment from sin is just the normal detachment you need in order to go to confession. And so a devout man like you, obviously a very devout man, who gains an indulgence for the departed, has a sufficient detachment from sin because of the very fact that he would be willing to confess those sins if he committed them. So it's okay, and there's often a misunderstanding about this condition of indulgences, that it requires a complete detachment from sin, as though you'd have to be like the Blessed Mother or Saint Joseph or an angel. But that isn't true. What's really true is you just need the sufficient detachment that you would need in order to confess those sins if you committed them. So you're okay. Just keep doing what you're doing. And you're making a lot of friends on the other side.
Yeah, this is important, but it's about divine mercy.
Right, of course, right.
And Jerry, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Hope that
God
was
bless
helpful to you. Father Hugh Barber is our chaplain, and may we have your blessing, Father, before we go.
Certainly. Benedictio Dei omnipotentis Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, descendat super vos et maniat semper.
Amen. Thank you so much, Father.
You're welcome.
See you in a few days.
Great.
We are broadcasting live from the 19th Annual EWTN Catholic Radio Conference. Up next, Trent Horn will be here. We're going to talk about apologetics. If you'd like some pointers from an apologist on apologetics, hang on. We'll be right back with that on Catholic Answers Live.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Press is proud to announce the Catholic Answers Classic Edition of G.K. Chesterton's Orthodoxy. Perhaps more than any other book that came from his prolific pen, Orthodoxy exemplifies G.K. Chesterton's style, humor, and singular ability to present ancient truths from a new perspective. Chesterton uses that unique style to offer Christianity as a rollicking adventure filled with beauty, wonder, and peril. Never overbearing or long-winded, Chesterton uses common sense, everyday human experience, and simple but unassailable folk logic to build a case for a Christian view of the universe. Whether you're a die-hard fan of Chesterton's or waiting to be introduced to him, there's no finer edition of Orthodoxy to own. Order your copy today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
What are the origins and teachings of Mormonism? What is the Book of Mormon, and how does it compare with the Bible? How can I respond to Mormon missionaries when they show up at my door to convert me? In 20 Answers Mormonism, you'll find smart, solid answers to these questions and many more, taking an inside look at the beliefs and practices of this fast-growing religion and helping you to understand their sometimes mysterious doctrines and traditions. 20 Answers Mormonism is part of the 20 Answers series from Catholic Answers, offering hard facts, powerful arguments, and clear explanations of the most important topics facing the Church and the world, all in a compact, easy-to-read package. Visit shop.catholic.com and take a look at this exciting new series from Catholic Answers Press.
This is Tim Staples, and I'm here to tell you about a project of mine that I'm really excited about. When Jesus spoke of giving his body and blood for us to eat and drink, it scandalized some of his followers who said, "How can a man give his flesh to eat?" Even to this day, some Christians find Jesus' words to be a stumbling block, to be sure. Most Protestants, in fact, apply a merely symbolic meaning to the New Testament passages that refer to Christ's body. In their attempts to make the Eucharist nothing more than a metaphor, we hear an echo of those gospel skeptics who found the Lord's plain meaning just too incredible to believe. Do you know the Church's teaching on the Eucharist? And more importantly, can you defend those facts with others? In my new audio presentation, Living Bread, A Defense of Christ's Real Presence in the Eucharist, I teach you to do just that, as I break down common objections to the Catholic doctrine of the Eucharist and give you the information you need to defend this essential doctrine from Scripture as well as the teaching and practices of the early Christians. You can get your copy of Living Bread today by calling 888-291-8000. That's 888-291-8000, logging on to Catholic.com, or visiting a good Catholic bookstore in your area. It's also available as an MP3.
Many atheists assert the only real form of knowledge is scientific knowledge, thus excluding any sort of religious knowledge, whether philosophical or theological. Such a belief is called scientism, and it's unreasonable for two reasons. First, it's self-refuting. Its truth cannot be verified by the scientific method. It's a metaphysical proposition, and as such, is not scientific knowledge. But if science can't verify the truth of scientism, well then, scientism itself cannot be a legitimate form of knowledge, in which case, it's self-refuting. Moreover, scientism undermines science as a rational form of inquiry, because it denies presupposed philosophical assumptions that are necessary to even do science, such as there's an external world outside the minds of scientists. So, to reject God's existence on the grounds that it's not scientific knowledge is simply unreasonable. I'm Carlo Broussard with a ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Welcome back to the second hour of Catholic Answers Live Wednesday show. This hour, Trent Horn is with us, and we're going to talk a bit about apologetics and being a better apologist. Our number, if you'd like to speak with Trent, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Trent is an apologist at Catholic Answers, the author of many books, including his most recent book with Layla Miller. I'm not sure if he wrote it or if he just got his name on it, but hi Trent, how are you?
Hello, Cy. Always good to speak with you.
And the book is called Made This Way.
That is right. And I did do a little bit of writing in that book, a good amount of co-authoring with Layla Miller, bringing my research on these important moral issues together with her experience as a mother of 8 and as a prolific Catholic blogger, and I think people have really appreciated it.
I get the feeling people really have. I think you're being slightly modest there. It's been more than appreciated. I think a lot of people are grabbing up this book because this is a real difficulty that we parents have. I mean, the world seems morally beyond confused. It seems morally crazy, and you need to be equipped to help, to talk to your kids about it, and people are looking for a lifeline. This book is it.
Right, and what we tried to do in the book is help bring together the teaching of the church to explain clearly for each of these moral issues, here's what the church believes, and here is the reasons why it's true, and then also how you explain it both to little kids in elementary school when the issues pop up unexpectedly, as well as to bigger kids in middle and high school who might challenge some of these teachings themselves.
888-318-7884 is the number. So how do I go about being a better apologist?
Well, you go about by being a better apologist by learning the faith as much as you can, and then just going out and defending it and learning lessons along the way as you defend the faith. I had a great interview on a podcast recently, classicaltheism.com, where we talked about how you can be a better case maker. How do you make the case for our faith? And what are, pitfalls to avoid? What are some important things to think about when you're sharing the faith? This can include common misunderstandings of the faith or misinterpretations of it. For example, it's not a great idea to say, well, Protestants believe you're saved by faith, and Catholics believe you're saved by faith and works. The Council of Trent, the Catechism, does not use the phrase faith and works. It can lead to an oversimplification and a distortion of what we really do believe. So it's little things like that along the way that as you explain the faith and dialogue with others, you'll see what are helpful things to share and what are less helpful ways when it comes to sharing the faith or answering objections to it.
And if you have questions along that line, 888-318-7884. Something I noticed, Trent, when you go around different parishes and things and speaking in different places around the country, and I noticed that there are more apologetics groups that have formed at parishes than I ever remember before, where people will say, yeah, we formed this apologetics group, we study so that we're ready to answer questions about the faith, and then they have projects that they do, that kind of thing. Have you noticed that too?
I have. I've noticed people who have bought cases of Why We're Catholic and now cases of Made This Way, which you can get at madethiswaybook.com, for groups at their parish that meet to discuss apologetics and how to become better at defending the Catholic faith. One such group invited me to their parish at St. Vincent de Paul Parish in Fort Wayne, Indiana, just over the past weekend. So it's really an exciting time to see lay people take ownership of their faith and be willing to go out and evangelize. Another great group is St. Paul's Street Evangelization. You have groups of lay people, they get together and they go right out where the people are, set up their tracts and their books, and give those away and engage in really good conversations with people. And they learn the art of apologetics. And it really is an art. I love and hopefully people can call in if you have questions about how do I defend the faith? What does it mean to be an apologist? How do you get started? How do you grow in this area? I mean, there's so many different nuances and even different styles of apologetics as well. So it's a neat field to talk about and learn how to get better at.
888-318-7884, the number 888-31-TRUTH. Now, when we say apologetics, and I think our audience knows what that term is, but what about the objection that you might hear that, well, we really should be about evangelizing?
Well, that is a very good question to ask. Why should we focus on apologetics or the defense of the faith when shouldn't our main focus be evangelism? And the two go hand in hand. They are not synonymous. So evangelism is the sharing of the good news of the gospel with a world that needs it. So evangelism is sharing the good news about our redemption and eternal life that comes to us through Jesus Christ. That's the good news of the gospel, and we share that by evangelizing. Apologetics is a subset of theology dedicated to defending the faith and defending that good news. So they're not the same thing. You can do evangelization without apologetics and by just sharing the good news, and all right, it moves someone's heart and they come back to the church. Or you sometimes might do apologetics without evangelization. You defend an article of the faith, maybe to a fellow believer who's having difficulty understanding something. You're not evangelizing them because they already believe, but you're helping them to better share the faith. So they're not the same, but they go together. Many times when we evangelize the world, share the good news about Jesus Christ, there's going to be objections to it. It's good news, but it's too good to be true, is what some people might say. So we got to give them reasons. Sometimes I think, really, Si, one of the biggest things that is holding back the sharing of the gospel in the modern world today is this. There is a loss of a sense of sin. There is no understanding of the bad news. And this is something that many people will chide us for when we talk about moral issues, like in my book, Made This Way. People will say, well, you're being judgmental. And, if you go out and evangelize, don't be judgmental. You don't want to be off-putting to people. You don't want to be judgy or use harsh language. And you shouldn't use unnecessarily offensive language. But at the same time, if you do everything in your power to make sure someone always feels good when you share the good news with them, they may not accept it. Because if there's no bad news, why bother accepting the good news? Who cares? That's the biggest challenge we face today. At least in the ancient world, pagans had a sense of guilt over their sins. They didn't know what to do about it, and the gospel was a relief to them. Now people think the good news, the gospel, is the bad news because it's judgy and I don't like it. It imposes on my morality. That's one of the biggest problems that we're facing today, biggest hurdles when it comes to sharing the faith.
That makes sense. I wonder how we lost that. I mean, I suppose you could do a whole, I'm sure many people have, kind of historical look at how the sense of sin was lost, the sense of God's mercy for the sinner, how that became a meaningless message because we don't believe we've done. I mean, we're basically, well, I'll put it to you this way, and I'll let you be the apologist. What the person who says, look, Trent, you talk about sin, but really it's just that, people lack a good education, or they have, they didn't get the right upbringing, and the fact is we're just biological creatures. We're not, all this sin stuff. It's just, some people are well formed and have had all the advantages, and some people are not.
Right. And I think what this does is that it reduces our responsibility as moral beings and moral agents, saying, well, you're not really responsible for your actions. You're just a product of causes around you. But then I might ask the question, look, if a lightning bolt sets a house on fire, you're not going to track down those electrons and put them in jail. If a shark eats somebody, you're not going to put the shark on trial. I mean, you might hunt the shark, you might kill it.
Need a bigger boat.
Yeah, right. But you're not going to say, well, we need to capture him alive and then put him on trial and get it, and see if he's guilty. No, we understand lightning bolts, sharks, tigers. These other elements that cause harm, we don't hold them morally responsible because they're the product of just physical causes in the world. They don't choose to do anything. They're forced to move by other things around them. But human beings are different. When a human being pins down a woman who is screaming and rapes her and refuses to take no for an answer, that we don't say, oh, well, that's just copulation. You see something like that at the zoo all the time. No, we say that's a moral crime, and that person has to be held morally responsible for this gravely evil act that they've performed. If you don't believe that, then you either have to hold non-human animals and natural disasters to the level of human beings, which would be a bizarro world, or you have to say human beings don't really have any moral responsibility at all. And deep down, people do have that. People might say, well, you're just a product of this or that. But those excuses don't work for people on their own because their conscience still speaks loudly to them. Some people have dulled their consciences. They stop listening, they muffle it over time. But still for many people, their conscience will speak to them that they did something wrong, even if no one finds out about it. and they were meant for more than this. This is not the person they're supposed to be. Ironically, when people do wrong things when they apologize to you, sometimes they'll use that phrase, "I'm really sorry, this is not who I am." As if, well, what do you mean this is not who you are? You just did this right now. Well, no, I have a true self, or a way that I'm supposed to be, a higher thing that one is aiming at. And if there's a goal we're aiming at, then sin makes a lot more sense, because all sin is, in Hebrew, it means to miss the mark. It means that we have not aimed for the righteous goal that God has led ahead for us.
We're talking about apologetics and being a better apologist, sharing your faith, explaining and defending the faith of the church. 888-318-7884 is the number. Already the line's starting to fill up, so if you've got a question for Trent, give a call, 888-318-7884. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with your calls for Trent Horn on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Hello, this is Archbishop Alexander Sample of the Archdiocese of Portland in Oregon. Keep that dial right here on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their faith and values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com. The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
Every single day, I get to help our listeners of the Sunrise Morning Show wake up, find out what's going on in the church and the world, and then walk with them as we all seek to grow in knowledge and love of Jesus Christ and the Catholic faith. I mean, how could it get any better?
The Sunrise Morning Show with Anna Mitchell and Matt Swain. Tomorrow morning, 6 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, coming to you from two different locations today. Trent is in our studio in San Diego, California. I am here at the 19th Annual EWTN Catholic Radio Conference in Birmingham, Alabama, where radio folks from all around the country have gathered. EWTN, is, you're probably aware of this, it's kind of a revolution in media. And you just meet the most fantastic people when you're around the EWTN folks. People who have started a radio station, people who have started whole radio networks, people who are trying to get something started. It's really something wonderful, and it's hundreds and hundreds of stations now. I got a mic here next to me. How many is it? How many EWTN stations are there? 1 million? Is there 1 million yet? 300. Over 300. I know it's way over 300. You're just counting the English language ones because they got Spanish language too, and that's all around the world too. So we're just delighted to be here at the conference, and we'll be here for the next couple of days. Bring you some special guests over the next couple days. One of whom will be Gloria Purvis, and Gloria's all right, but I have never met her in person, so I'm looking forward to doing a show with her in person. I think Greg and Lisa Popchak will be with us. Maybe we'll get Dr. Ray in here. We'll see who else we can get for you. And today we've got Trent Horn and a lot of people with calls for Trent. Trent, you ready to take calls?
Sure thing.
Lee in Sugarland, Texas, which now I want to visit, listening to EWTN on Sirius Satellite Channel 130. Lee, your question for Trent. Hi, Lee. I don't think we have Lee. Lee is off in Sugarland. Well, we'll come back to Lee. Hang on, Lee. Sometimes people take a little break from their phone. Let's go to John in Omaha, Nebraska, listening on KBSF. John, your question for Trent Horn.
Hey, Trent, and hi. Thank you. I kind of have multiple questions here, but to start out, and it's funny this topic come up tonight because I had an incident today on social media where I learned I had a family. There's a family member in California who's kind of become a disciple of a psychologist who's preaching the absurdities and the evils of religion, and I'm kind of getting the idea that she's following this a little bit. And and as I was reading this and things on her Facebook page, I instantly began to feel my blood begin to boil. So I've always been interested in apologetics and have continually read voraciously and I've learned most of my faith through my adult years, even though I went to Catholic school. But so one of my questions is, how do you take the emotion out of it? Is there a systematic approach to not debating, but in your apologetics?
Right.
Is there a systematic approach in which you can keep your thinking straight when you're trying to explain something about the faith? And and any tips you could give on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. First, just understand that the emotions that will come forward, a lot of times we can feel these emotions. I mean, even I get pretty emotional sometimes when I read things. I mean, right now, the things that make me the most emotional when I read them are things that are patently absurd, that cause grave harm to other people. So that's why sometimes even things related to abortion or transgender identity, things that I can't believe a rational person would accept, that also can cause extreme grave harm. It makes me upset and angry. And anger is not necessarily a bad emotion. A righteous anger motivates us to do good in a fallen world. The key is understanding is to think of our emotions and say, I control them, they don't control me. They're like the little pack of dogs I take on a walk, and I take them along the walk. They follow me. I don't let them drag me along, and I'm holding the leash. So the way to do that, I think, first is to be rooted in prayer. When we find ourselves in these situations, first and foremost, even if we feel that sense of pride, thinking, I can do this on my own, to say, no, Lord, give me the words that you want me to speak. Lord, help me to understand this with your heart and mind, to truly reach the depths of this person's soul, to see not just their argument, but also where they're coming from and whatever emotional baggage they might be carrying. So so sometimes we also get angry when we read something and we think it's an argument, we don't know how to answer it, and so we get defensive. We get scared sometimes, thinking, "Oh my gosh, what if this refutes my faith?" And I don't have the answer, and we're pressed on it, and that we can get defensive and flustered. And sometimes anger is usually a response to the feeling of injustice. That's its primary response. When we feel there's an injustice or we're wronged, we get angry. Sometimes anger, though, can be a defense mechanism when we're scared, when we think there's a threat, and it's our way to kind of fight back against that threat. So if we're angry because we think we can't answer a question, we should be humble and say, you know what? I don't have all the answers. There's people for 2,000 years who've been studying these things who know a lot more than I do. Maybe I should go and see what they say. I bet there's more to this than meets the eye. The book of Proverbs puts it well. Proverbs says that I think it's like Proverbs 18, that the first who presents his case seems to be right until another comes forward to challenge him. So your friend who rattles off all this stuff about why religion is bad, it can seem imposing at first, but say, all right, well, let's just take it one thing at a time. And John, when I examine arguments, when people present an argument to me, I use this analogy. I think of it as kind of like a table. Okay, so the tabletop, imagine the top of the table, that's the conclusion. That's what they're trying to prove. And if it's a real argument, it'll have legs to support it. If it's just an assertion, there's a difference between an argument and an assertion. An assertion is, religion makes people miserable in the long run. Okay, that's an assertion. How do you know that that's true? All right, well, we have this evidence here and that evidence here. Okay, now we've got an argument. Those are the legs supporting the table. Let me look at that. Are these good studies? What is it trying to prove? What do you mean by this? We can also say, does it follow? Some people, I could go a little bit more into this about analyzing the arguments, but let's just stop here. Is that a helpful guide for you about dealing with emotions? And then when the arguments come at you, see the conclusion and try to figure out what premises are holding it up and see if they make sense. So let me stop there. How is that for you?
No, that's a good start, especially. I like the way you were talking about the tabletop and the assertions and the legs and analyzing it that way. And I think that analysis also tempers a little bit of the emotion if you can get in the habit of doing that. I've got kind of a sarcastic streak sometimes that I can't seem to sometimes control. And instead of just jumping at logical ways, just kind of want to twist the screws a little bit, just initially, and I have to learn to stop that. But yeah. No, I'm very interested in the way your approach to it. And the other thing would be too, do you have, like for instance, in this particular case, They're talking about religion as a form of abuse.
Yeah, well,
And
let's play around with a sample case. What do they say?
There are studies that say that religion enables humanity to flourish. I mean, that's been the case through the generations, through history,
Right.
that it's important for us. But where do you find things like that if you need it? I mean, just do you have is there a database for that? But
Yeah, the question about religion's sociological effects on human beings is an interesting one. I don't think, though, that it is the primary source to determine whether or not a religious belief is true. We need to say what is the religious belief, what does it correspond to? Either there is a God, or either Jesus did rise from the dead, or he did not. And people will respond to religion in many different ways. The sociological study of religion is very difficult. You say, well, does religion make people better off, worse off? What does that mean? Because there are people who say that they're religious, for example. They'll say that they're a religious person, yet they rarely ever go to church. There are people who, you meet these people all the time. They say they're Catholic. They show up at Mass on Christmas and Easter, but they don't give a second thought to the teachings of the church any other time of year. So that's why it gets difficult to study these things about religion. However, for the beneficial effects of religion, one good source, I believe Rodney Stark, is an author who has written a lot on this subject. He's cataloged a lot of the benefits of Christianity and Catholicism. I don't believe he's Catholic himself, but he's written a lot on this subject. So Rodney Stark might be a good area you could go to on that particular question. But aside from the data, I would say you don't even need a bunch of data to answer the question. I would just start with some basic what and why questions to get to the source here. So, and also what, why, and why does that matter? Sometimes people will bring up a point and it just has no relevance to the truth of our faith. What does it mean religion enables abuse? They're saying, well, abuse is something that we find in religious organizations because they have hierarchies and because it can be complicated, that allows abuse to happen. Okay, well, why does that matter? I don't necessarily disagree with that. But if your answer is we should just get rid of religion, well, no, what you're really saying is get rid of hierarchical organizations. No more USA gymnastic teams, no more NFL, no more any other, no more Boy Scouts, no more anything. That when you get human beings together, they will sin and hurt one another, whether they're religious or not. So when these things come up, John, ask, what is this person saying? What is the evidence they're using to support this claim, and why does this claim matter in the first place? The claim may be just a non sequitur. It may not follow that even if the claim is true, it doesn't follow that religion is false or that it's something we should give up. So that might be another way I would look at it. Is that helpful?
very much so. I really respect your work, and I appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions.
Sure thing.
Thanks, John. Thanks very much. We're talking with one of our apologists, one of the finest apologists you'll meet anywhere, Trent Horn, about apologetics today. Your call is welcome, 888-318-7884. We go now to Adam in Cincinnati, listening on Sacred Heart Radio. Adam, your question for Trent Horn.
Hi there, Trent and Cy. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Doing well.
You're welcome. I appreciate you taking my call. There was a friendly discussion, and all honesty, probably due to the fact of family matters and death itself. But the question was, he had put an article online about why are we able to put to death our pets, but not our Aunt Sue or something like that. And I saw that he was being honest and truthful about it, and I was responding to him in charity, but I just wanted to hear what you would have to say if you were approached with that question. Why put to death Fido, but not Aunt Sue?
Right. Well, the simple reason is we can put Fido to death for almost any reason we feel like, because Fido does not have a right to life. Fido is not a human being who has intrinsic value, dignity, and human rights. Now, Fido is a living creature that can feel pain, and so dogs and cats and other living creatures as moral beings, as rational moral beings, we should not cause them unnecessary pain. So it would be morally wrong, for example, to set Fido on fire as a way, take him to the vet, and the vet just douses him in gasoline and puts him on fire to end his life. That causes him unnecessary suffering. Now, that doesn't mean we can't cause animals suffering. We cause them suffering by killing them so that we can eat them, but that doesn't harm them. So I guess what the person is saying is, look, if my dog is suffering horribly, we put that dog out of his misery. But we don't do that to my Aunt Sue. Why don't we do that? It's because we value your Aunt Sue more. That doctors, you can say this, doctors will do whatever it takes to kill Aunt Sue's pain, to treat the problem afflicting Aunt Sue. Even if it's very expensive, we will do that if it's beneficial to her as a patient. But Fido's just a dog. In fact, it would be irresponsible to spend a lot of money treating a dog or a cat when that money could go towards human beings. I might wrap this up in a bow when we come back from the break, but that is the issue here, that if beings are suffering, we'll ease their suffering, but we respect the rights that human beings have when they suffer.
Hang on, Adam. We'll do more when we come back. Trent Horn is our guest, and we're talking about apologetics with an apologist. We'll be right back with more of that after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Hello, this is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Keep your dial tuned to Catholic Answers Live.
With the recent commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the release of Humanae Vitae, there have been fresh attacks on Catholic teaching from outside and, unfortunately, inside the Church. That's why Catholic Answers thought it critical to provide a vigorous affirmation of Paul VI's prophetic wisdom with our newest book, Inseparable: 5 Perspectives on Sex, Life, and Love in Defense of Humanae Vitae. We asked 5 distinguished contributors to reflect on and defend Humanae Vitae from 5 perspectives, each of them compelling, together forming a mosaic of truth. Don't be caught uninformed when the topic of contraception comes up among friends, family, and co-workers. Order your copy of Inseparable today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or visiting the shop at Catholic.com.
We live in an age of indifference. Does truth exist? Maybe. Is there a God? Who knows? Does it matter what religion you believe in? Probably not. If you think so, fine. I'm spiritual, but not religious. Apologist Matt Nelson says this indifference is the great spiritual sickness of our age, a product of the relativism that dominates our culture. And rather than remain indifferent, he did something about it. In his new book, Just Whatever, Matt looks at the different kinds of indifference you likely encounter in your friends and family members, and maybe in yourself, and offers an antidote to the problem that plagues our age. Order your copy of Just Whatever today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Hi, this is Dr. David Anders. There are a lot of misconceptions about the Catholic faith. We clear them up on Call to Communion, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio. Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We're talking apologetics with an apologist. If you'd like to be a better apologist, that is our topic this hour, and you are welcome to talk with Trent Horn about that. When we went into the break, Trent, you were in the midst of talking with Adam in Cincinnati, who was looking for an answer for a friend who wants to know why we put down animals but not humans.
Right, and there's more we could nuance on this question. I'd like to go into it just a little bit more, because it's a common term it's a common argument by euthanasia and assisted suicide advocates that's thrown out there, basically saying we're more compassionate to animals that suffer than humans who suffer, that we consider it inhumane to let a dog or a cat live when they're in chronic pain, and so we just simply euthanize them. We just inject them with a drug to kill them, and nobody bats an eye at that. We think that that's fine. Whereas with your Aunt Sue or your Grandpa Bill or even a younger person who has been in an accident, who is sick or in pain, we won't euthanize them. But what they fail to recognize here is that the reason we euthanize most animals in this country is not because they're in chronic pain, but it's because they're unwanted. We euthanize them because that animal's life is more of a burden to us than we want to take on. So usually, even if they are sick or they're in pain, we could maybe spend $50,000, $100,000 on a surgery to ease their pain. We could use intravenous drugs to ease their pain, but we wouldn't do all that. We'd say that's a waste of money. It's just a dog or a cat. You just kill them. But not even if they're in pain. Sometimes it's just there's an overpopulated area and there's too many dogs and cats, and no one's going to take care of them, and you don't want them roaming the streets, becoming feral and stray. So they're just euthanized because they're unwanted, and there's no one who's going to care for them. Should we do that to elderly shut-ins? They're unwanted, no one wants to care for them, and it would be expensive, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to care for them? No, we don't. We treat humans as having more value than animals. Now, that doesn't mean that a human being who is near the end of their life, like if you have an animal near the end of their life, you might, euthanize them. It doesn't mean, however, with a human being near the end of their life, you use every treatment available to extend their life. Some treatments are disproportionate. They're burdensome financially or physically or emotionally. And they have very little benefit or no benefit to the patient. So you're not obligated to use these disproportionate means of care, or what used to be called or sometimes called extraordinary means of care. You are obligated to provide human beings, in virtue of their humanity, ordinary means of care that provide a benefit to the patient. And there's more we can talk about that. We have a 20 Answers booklet on end-of-life issues that some of our listeners may be interested in that goes into the topic in more detail.
Okay, Adam.
That sounds great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Appreciate that call. Let's go to Jordan in New Orleans, listening on 690 AM. Jordan, your question for Trent Horn.
Hi, Trent. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Sure.
I have a Protestant friend who is currently in his first year of seminary, and we have some pretty healthy banter back and forth.
Sure.
But we continue to get onto the topic of predestination and salvation.
Right.
And we're actually both reading the Confessions of St. Augustine, I think for probably pretty different reasons.
Right. Sure.
But there was an excerpt from the text where Augustine talks about how God is immutable, and how God immutably knows and wills. And he asked me how that aligns with my view of how people are saved.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to give him the best explanation that I could. That through baptism we're saved, we're being saved, and we have hope for salvation.
Right.
But he said that he would take that explanation to imply that God is mutable or changeable, and I didn't understand where he got that from. And he made a pretty bold claim that most Catholics, or all Catholics and most Protestants, believe that man is the ultimate cause of salvation. So I guess my question is, how can I argue
Sure.
my faith in the Catholic teaching on this?
Right.
In a respectable way.
So now he said most Christians, including most Protestants, believe man is the ultimate cause of his salvation, but he does not believe that.
He believes it's God, right?
Right. And he says even many Protestants believe that. Is he, I wonder what seminary he's going to, is he Reformed or Calvinist by any chance?
I really don't know.
Might be worth asking because it sounds like that with the language that he's using. So among Protestants, well, basically among Reformed Protestants or Calvinists, there is the belief in what's called monergism. That's the idea that salvation occurs 100% through God's actions. So God determines who will be saved, and even though they don't like to really admit it, God determines who will be damned. And then God saves people. He chooses who will be saved. Then he saves them, gives them grace that is irresistible. and then those people will unfailingly go to heaven. And in fact, Jesus died on the cross only for those people. He did not die for the people who are going to hell. He only died for these people that God chose. So that might be the view. It sounds like if he believes that God is the one who saves us, he might fall into that view of thinking, that theology. First, what you can share with him is that the Catholic Church does believe in predestination, that God is sovereign, nothing surprises God, he has a plan for the universe, and he did choose us, that he chose to give us his grace, chose us for salvation. We are the elect, the ones who are chosen. The paragraph you can point him to in the Catechism is paragraph 600. It says, "To God, all moments of time are present in their immediacy. When, therefore, he establishes his eternal plan of predestination, he includes in it each person's free response to his grace." So what he said is like, well, if God, if we can decide whether we're saved or not, it's kind of how he's looking at it. If we decide and we're in time and we respond to God, isn't that going to change God somehow? No, not at all. Because what the Catechism is saying here in paragraph 600 is that God is outside of time. God sees past, present, and future in one moment. God creates the world. He sees all of it in one moment. Nothing surprises him. So when God creates the world, he has a plan for how everything is going to turn out. He's going to work everything to his good. But here's the thing with God. He's all-powerful and all-knowing. Because of that, he factors in our free choices within his plan. That includes our free choice to accept his grace or reject it. You can also say to him that the church believes, we agree with him, that we condemn a heresy called Pelagianism. That is the idea you can achieve heaven, you can stay in a state of grace without God's grace. The church condemns that. The Council of Orange in the early church also condemned semi-Pelagianism. That's the idea that you, on your own abilities, could go to God and say, God, I want you to save me. We can't do that. But what we can do is God can come to us and give us his grace, his offer of salvation, to move our heart in that direction, and then we can freely say, yes, I want it, or no, I don't. Or we could say, yes, I want your grace, Lord, and then later on down the line say, never mind, I don't want it, and commit a mortal sin and throw it away, but then respond to God's grace again and say, never mind, I am sorry, I am contrite for my sin, I would like to be restored to friendship with you. So what you can say to him, and going back to paragraph 600, is, look, we as Catholics, we believe God predestines, God saves us, we cannot save ourselves, but we are free to accept or reject his offer of salvation. So that might be where you could point him to. And then a few resources that might be helpful. My book, The Case for Catholicism, has a whole section on how we're saved. You may find that helpful. You might also like my debate that I had with James White on the question, can a Christian lose his salvation? You can find that on YouTube. So is that a helpful explanation, or would you like any follow-up on any of that?
No, that's very helpful. Thank you. I'll definitely be looking into those resources. I appreciate that.
No problem. Also, Sai, I'd like to add on to that obviously the issue of predestination is a thorny one. The church does not have a settled teaching about how exactly God's predestination works. I've thought about actually making a little graphic about this to help explain it to people. That basically, if you imagine predestination on a spectrum, there are two views that we as Catholics are not allowed to believe in. We need to believe in predestination of some kind because the Bible says we're predestined. Christians need to believe in that. But what that means, different people have explained it in different ways. So on the one hand, like I just mentioned, the Calvinist view that God determines and wills everything and that man's free choices have no effect in the matter whatsoever, we're not permitted to believe that. Man does have the ability to accept the grace of God or to reject it at a later time. So that's not a permitted view of predestination in the sense that God actively willed every single thing that happens, including our own sins or rejection of him. On the other extreme, though, are people who say that human beings basically choose things. You can't believe in Pelagianism, I mentioned earlier, but also the idea that God doesn't predestine anything and that he doesn't even know the future. he doesn't know what's going to happen in the future at all. He's just really well prepared for it. That is a theology called open theism. That would be like the direct opposite of Calvinism. God doesn't determine anything. The future is indeterminate. The church has defined that God is all-knowing, and so he knows the future is something that can be known. He knows what will happen to us. There are prophecies he can make sure takes place. In between those two, the church has different views on predestination. There's the view of St. Thomas Aquinas called Thomism. There's also another view put forward by the Jesuit theologian Luis Molina called Molinism. And these are kind of more in-house debates among Catholics. So the bottom line, go back to paragraph 600. It just says, we believe God is outside of time, so he has a plan of predestination. That includes within that plan our free response to his grace.
Okay. Yeah, that's very, very clear. Trent Horn is our guest this hour. Our number, 888-31-TRUTH. And if you have a question about apologetics, if you have maybe you've been thinking, I'd like to be better at this, this is the perfect time to call and talk with Trent. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of your calls after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Have a question? We've got answers.
Catholic Answers
Live.
Do you love sharing the gospel and want to learn to be more effective? Join the St. Paul Street Evangelization online School of Evangelization. You will learn to build bridges of trust and make disciples by befriending strangers, proclaiming the gospel, inviting people to the church, and praying with others. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you are unable to give, we'll give you a membership at no cost. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Listeners to Catholic Radio, I think, benefit most, at least initially, from what I call remedial catechesis. What Catholic Radio does is it becomes an echo chamber for the teaching authority of the Catholic Church. And what we're doing is teaching many things which have been neglected over the last 40, 50 years. If you listen to Catholic Radio, you know what the Catholic Church teaches.
Al Cresta thinks Catholic Radio is important. So should you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We are on our annual pilgrimage to where it all started, the home of, the worldwide home, really, of a great percentage of Catholic broadcasting, whether it's radio broadcasting or television broadcasting, is here in Birmingham, Alabama. You probably know that that's Rita Rizzo's fault, also known as Mother Angelica. And it's just a great pleasure to be here at the radio conference in Birmingham. And I mentioned that it's a pilgrimage for us, Trent, but you have another pilgrimage. You do a pilgrimage every year, right?
Well, I did one last year to the Holy Land, and I'll be doing another one this year to Greece in the footsteps of St. Paul. We'll visit the sites where St. Paul sent letters to different Christian communities, and we'll also be visiting Ephesus in Turkey and the island of Patmos, where St. John was exiled and wrote the book of Revelation. Very excited about it. We still have some spots left, and you can learn more about that at the website for the pilgrimage, which is Greece2019.com.
I still can't believe you got the website Greece 2019. How did Greece not get the website Greece 2019? It just
they weren't thinking ahead. I guess. I guess if they were doing the Olympics in 2019, which would be an off year, you wouldn't do that. Yeah. If there was a big event, otherwise nobody thinks of it. So I'm also making sure to get Cy Kellett 2019 as well, because who knows what could happen.
That's true. That's why I'm running for something. No, you can't run in the odd number years.
In 2019, I don't know if any offices are open. You could start your campaign really, really early.
We had a big election. Did you know that yesterday, Trent? We had a big election. I got to go read about it because
we did. I was really, really bummed because I didn't win anything.
No, I was so happy because the most important proposition in the country passed yesterday.
What is that?
We're getting rid of standard time in California. We're just going to stay on daylight savings time.
Well, I thought that was contingent on Congress acting.
Contingent. I'm going to go look up contingent. You take the next call. Okay. Molly in Portland, Oregon, listening on Mater Dei Radio. You are up next. Molly, your question for Trent Horn. Hi, Molly. I love the name Molly, by the way. Even if she's not there, I still love the name Molly. Hello, Molly. Are you there now? That's all right. Still love the name Molly.
Good golly, Miss Molly. Where could she be?
Oh, okay. Oh, that is Trent.
Sorry, I had to.
Is your last name Corn or Horn? Because that was...
It's pronounced
Corny.
Cornet.
Cornet. All right. Let's try Michael in Lafayette, Indiana, and then we'll come back and see if Molly's still around. Michael in Lafayette, Indiana, do you have a question for Trent?
Hello. My question is, do you have any advice for people who defend the faith without getting defensive?
Sure. Don't be out to win the fight. Be out to understand the other person. A lot of times I think we get defensive when we are trying to defend our faith because we imagine our conversation. Usually we're most defensive, I think, when we're engaging people online, when we're using Facebook comm boxes, for example, comments, Twitter back and forth. And here it's easy to be defensive and angry because it feels like you're arguing with a robot. And who knows, it could be a robot. It could be some kind of bot out to get you. So it's easier to say something to text on a screen than it would be to a person right in front of me. And when that happens, I think you should say to yourself, you know what? I don't have to engage this person online in a lengthy argument. My time is very valuable. I only have so much of it, and I should use it to build up God's kingdom and not lose my peace over something like this. So one, I think it's important that you can tell people, usually, sometimes this happens in person, but also, it happens mostly online, to let people know, hey, I'm willing to answer questions, but I don't feel like getting into a big debate right now. And I think that when you're engaging people and you're feeling getting defensive, lower the bar a little bit. Your job is not to beat the argument, refute the person, get the last word in. You don't need to do that. You can always say in a conversation, especially online, hey, it was great chatting with you. I liked sharing some of this. I think I've shared enough to make my position known. And if you want to learn more, you could go here. But I hope you have a really blessed day and, God bless. And the person will come back on and say, you bailed on the argument. You bailed on what we're talking about. And you're like, well, look, you don't have a right to my attention. I shared with you, and I hope it benefits you and other people that read this. So I think that what you can do is say, okay, I'm not here to win the argument, refute the person. This is not a boxing match. Instead, I'm going to ask this person questions. When you're feeling defensive, just ask the person questions, whether they're in person or online. What do you believe about this? Why do you think that? How do you know that's true? What do you think about this response to your argument? And just realize you don't have to be the boxer. You can be the reporter. You're out just to get the scoop, find out what this person believes, and then you can tell them, hey, you know what? I'd like to give you some more on this for you to think about. Do you mind if I just go look up a few things so I can make sure to get you a really good answer? And then when you take it slowly in that way, you don't have to be defensive about it because you're not in a fight. You're not in a boxing match. You're not in a debate. You're in a conversation. You're both trying to figure out the truth, and the person should just be respectful of you in that regard. And you can show them respect by just asking them a lot of questions like, what do they think and why do they think that? Because at the very least, they will feel heard. And a lot of times, many people, they just want to let their views be known and understood, and you can help them. And when you do that, you'll diffuse the hostility a little bit. Is that helpful?
That's very helpful, and I think that advice is good for myself as well as the other person, because it sounds like charity on all sides here.
That's right. And remember also, it's kind of funny, Michael, we had a previous caller who said, I want to turn the screw a little bit, but I want to be nice. How do I do that? Well, in his letter to the Romans, St. Paul quoted the Proverbs when they said, when you perform an act of kindness for an enemy, it's like heaping hot coals on their head. So if you're really kind and charitable to someone who's mean to you or attacking you, and you don't have sarcasm buried within it, you're just trying to respond politely and courteously, that can make them really upset, and it indirectly accomplishes your goal of turning the knife a bit, but it's not bad because that's not what you are directly intending. Catholics, we call this the principle of double effect. You don't intend to want to really make the person upset. You intend to treat them in a courteous and fair manner. And if they get upset, well, that's on them for doing so. But when you're in these situations, I mentioned this to the other callers, always make sure you're led by the Spirit. Pray, avail yourself of sacraments, seek counsel from others. That will give you those supernatural graces to allow you to have calm composure with those that you're speaking with. Also, what can be helpful, this thought just popped into my mind. God likes to do this. What he does is he rattles around your mind and he pulls out something people need to hear. I think sometimes we get angry and defensive with other people about the faith in our conversations because we are off kilter or off balance. I think about the times in my life when I'm rude to people, even on Catholic Answers Live, when I have had a bad day and I haven't handled a conversation as well as I could have. And a lot of times that happens when I didn't get sleep the night before. I had a fight with my spouse or with my children. I'm stressed. I haven't been to Mass. I haven't prayed. I've let stress and worry and anger get inside of me. And then when I'm in these conversations, it comes out in all the negative ways. So I think one way to not be defensive in conversations is to take care of yourself. Spiritually, emotionally, physically. Make sure you're getting rest, eating right, exercising. When you have balance in life, you're much better to engaging other people on these conversations. You feel this peace inside of you, and you have that perfect peace of Christ, both in the spirit and the body. Well, you can have just, really good and easy conversations. At least that's what I think.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate that. Appreciate that call. Trent, don't argue with Laura.
I know. You never win. That is the number one rule you have to learn that I have learned in all of these years. I am just not right, and I have to just accept that.
That is not the lesson you should be taking. She is so much nicer a person than you are.
No, I know she's nice. When we have our fights, I'm the one who has instigated things and sent the train off the rails.
Can you imagine fighting with Trent Horn? Man, I just thought about that. That's a horrible thought.
Do you know what is terrible about the disagreements that we have? When we have disagreements, I frequently resort to the Socratic method. And my wife has forbidden that at home because it seems like I'm using some kind of a tactic, like a Jedi mind trick, even though in most marriage advice books, they'll say the Socratic method is a helpful way to resolve conflict. We're just not allowed to do that at our house.
Trent, you need to learn the basic lesson. Do what your wife tells you. You're just missing it.
It is a simple lesson, but not an easy one. One I am trying to grow in every
Padawan.
day. Yes, indeed.
Rachel in Lafayette, Louisiana, is up next. Start listening on Christ the King Radio. Rachel, your question for Trent.
Sure.
Hi, Trent Horn.
Hi.
I just want to say I think you're very patient with the people you debate, especially on you're only allowed to call in if you're against or for abortion and stuff. I think that's why I can listen to you for so long, because you're so patient. But I don't know what your wife would say. But my question was, I have trouble when I'm trying to talk about homosexuality, and it's not as obvious of like with abortion, you can give them a one-liner, like you're killing an innocent human. But with homosexuality, especially some of my family members are homosexual, and I love them very much, and they're sweet, they're good people, but they'll oversimplify it by saying, how does that directly affect you? Or how does it directly affect the world? If he wants to do this behind closed doors, why do you care? Yeah. And it's almost like they have to be religious for me to agree on a certain grounds, like, well, you have a soul. But of course, not everyone believes that. So where do you start?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, I think you could try to find common ground with them and say, well, normally I agree with you. If someone is doing something in private that doesn't affect me, it probably isn't my business. But let me ask you a question. If someone does something behind closed doors that hurts themselves, that causes themselves grave harm, if I care about that person, shouldn't I tell them what they're doing is causing themselves grave harm? Like if, let's say, they're addicted to drugs or pornography or gambling, and so they do something that causes themselves harm. Now, they may jump and say, well, homosexuality doesn't cause harm. You can say, well, let's just back it up a little bit. Would you agree just doing something in general that's bad for you, that is not in the way you should be living, that could harm you, even if it's done in private, I can care about that, and I'd want to reach out to those people. The next step would be then saying, okay, well, does homosexual or same-sex behavior, is that harmful? Is that something that we should be doing? And I think many people will say, well, yeah, what's the harm or what's the problem? And the reason people think that, Rachel, I believe, is because they use terms like homosexual and heterosexual. And they focus more on, when they use a term like homosexual, the first thing they think of is a person who is like them in basically every respect, except the other person that they love is just a little bit different than the person that we love. I love my wife, and my wife happens to be a woman, and this person who identifies as homosexual, they love a man, if they're a man. Or if they're a woman, they love another woman, and maybe they are kind of more like me. And that's just all people look at it as. But we have to look and say, what about the sexual act itself? So I would recommend asking them the question, what is sex for, and can we ever misuse sex? Do you think sex for polygamy or even sex with animals or cousins or siblings, would that be wrong? So I would get to the question, what is sex for, and can we misuse sex to harm ourselves? Why don't you stay on the line, Rachel, since we're at the end of our show together. I'd like to get your email address, and I'll send you some more resources on this topic.
Thanks, Rachel. Hold on. Trent Horn, thanks very much for another fine hour.
Thank you very much, Si.
And if people want to go on pilgrimage with Trent, Greece 2019 is the website. And we'll see you tomorrow from the 19th annual EWTN Catholic Radio Conference on Catholic Answers Live.